I'd like to apologize of last week, as the video didn't come out, as you could have all noticed, as clear. It was a technical problem, or the technical way that it was open, and we ask everybody to pardon us over here, and we look forward for clearer times. We continue in the halacha of, in the Perek of Chaf Gimel, the 23rd chapter, and we were holding by the words which begin Ki ein shum davar nifrod ki im behester panim kinal, which is about 2/3, as you can see in the English text, about 2/3 into the chapter. Or if you see it on TanyaOnline.com, the chapter, the text is precisely according to the class, meaning the text which we actually cover in the class. So what we were discussing is because that Torah, or for that matter, we're holding a little further. Kidiksiv kulam b'chochma asisa. So we were discussing is that the Torah, what one learns, is way superior. The energy which exists in Torah is way superior than all the vitality and energy which flows and comes through and is the mere makeup of all the olamot, all the worlds, even olamot elyonim, even the supreme worlds. As we elaborated last week, we don't know much when we deal with supreme worlds. We know what it's brought in Kabbalah and brought in a number of places. Even Mefarshei HaMikra bring it. The famous for Olamot, which is Atzilus, Bria, Yitzira, Asiya. But in our minds, we think about a supreme world, we think about Gan Eden, and therefore we stuck to that example. And one would perhaps suggest that, we learn Torah and do mitzvahs in order to reach Gan Eden. If you think about it, alibah de'emes, the way the truth of the matter is that the entire one Mishnah, again, just recapping of what we mentioned last week, has the much greater energy exists within one Mishnah than all the Olamot Elyonim, and even all the entire, again, sticking to that example of Gan Eden, entire world of Gan Eden. The mere makeup of Gan Eden is a ziv, is just a ray, an extension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, while the Mishnah is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So one Mishnah, the energy of one Mishnah, which is the essence, the core essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is so much greater and more so infinitely greater than all the energy which exists in Gan Eden, and the entire makeup of Gan Eden, the entire makeup of an Olam Elyon of Gan Eden doesn't have its independent energy. It's only an extension of God. That's how there is the whole makeup of Gan Eden. How much more so the light which shines in Gan Eden, each level rather, according to the level of the neshama which is there to experience that gili, that revelation. All of that, from beginning to the end, is just a ziv, is just a ray of Hashem, hence an extension of Hashem, as opposed to the Torah itself is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And in essence, even though we're trained to believe that all this is in order to enter into Gan Eden, if you look at it alibah de'emes, the whole Gan Eden is just a ziv, as the Lashon expression is nen in miziv hashchina. The neshama is yoshmi, and they sit and they have a no, and they have derive pleasure from the ray of the Shechina. While the Shechina itself, the Torah itself, the Torah itself is the Shechina, not an extension of, not a ray of the Shechina, but is the Shechina. As we mentioned again, it's time and again, it's written in a number of places, and that's the way the Eibush Hashem began. The Aseret Hadibah is Anochi Hashem Elokecha. As the Gemara says, Anochi is an acronym that's based on Nigla the Torah, and that Anochi, additional to which is quoted so many times from the Zohar, which is the chelik hanista shebetorah of Arieh v'kuchabricha kol echad. Torah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one. Hence the Torah is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Masnisa Malchus is the expression. The Mishnah is the Melech. not only a ray of the Melech, that we find even in the Gemara, it says, Anechi Hashem Lekecha, which is the way the Eibishter opened up the Aseres HaDibros, which is the Chlalis Kol HaTeira Kula, the entire Teira as it began, or as encompasses the Aseres HaDibros encompasses the entire Teira, is Anechi, is an acronym. Ano Nafshi Ksavis Yavis. Hashem says, I placed my soul, my core essence, the Anechi, in the Teira, and Yahavis, and I gave it over to you. So the Teira is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So one Mishnah, when one learns any part of Torah, give an example of Mishnah, but anything which is truly Torah, maybe Teisha Bapeh, Teisha Biksa, be connected to the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Can you compare the core essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to a mere ray of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, an extension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? There's no comparison at all. So this is also based on the famous Mishnah brought in Pirkei Avos, Yov Hashach has b'tshuva beil mazeh, Teira b'teira to b'tshuva ma'asim tev beil mazeh, mikol chayil mabah. That one moment, 1 hour, 1 moment, one time, time frame, or one moment in time is preferable, immersed in tshuva ma'asim tevim, which encompasses the entire experience of one's yid learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. And tshuva, returning to HaKadosh Baruch Hu via learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, or tshuva kipshut is similar when chas v'shalom someone violates. He's involved in aved of tshuva, enhancing his connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, again via his expression with greater passion, but again with Torah. Mitzvahs is greater than the entire Elam Haba. The entire Elam Haba. And not only the particular neshama's experience with Elam Haba, there's no limitation. It doesn't say one's Elam Haba, this person's Elam Haba, that Elam Haba. We're talking about the entire package of Elam Haba, which includes all the revelations to the greatest of tzaddikim, which they certainly do experience and appreciate and derive pleasure in this experience in Elam Haba, including Moshe Rabbeinu and Avraham and Yitzchak v'Yaakov. The entire package of Elam Haba doesn't come. Even Kol Chayil Mabah doesn't come. The entire life and experience in Mabah doesn't come to one moment of Tshuva Ma'asim Tev Me'el Mazeh. What's the Higayon? What's the Svara? Answer: this is Ziv HaShechina. This is just a ray of the Shechina. In Teira and mitzvahs b'chalal. But in this past few weeks, we even, as Al Terebe demonstrates and clarifies and shows us that even Teira, even more than mitzvahs, one connects to the Anechi, to the core essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hence, there's no comparison. And to note, before we go on, that we're not talking about the pleasure over here. Pleasure doesn't, just like anything else in life, pleasure does not constitute the greatness of something. Someone is indulgent in particular pleasures, for that matter, if he's only sometimes it could cross into areas. In other words, when we weigh and we measure pleasure within the human experience, on the contrary, someone is overly indulgent, he only looks for pleasure, is considered a lowly type of person. It doesn't mean that we can't have pleasure in things which are loftier, higher, and more meaningful experiences. And it doesn't mean we have to uproot the pleasure, the koach of tainug, that koach of pleasure which exists within us. But if life is not measured, or quality is not measured based on pleasure, quite on the contrary. And even when you're dealing with particular ideas, for example, something specific, for example, in someone's diet, if he's only looking for the pleasure, food which is pleasurable to him, so then that's not, as the average doctor will tell you, that's not considered a healthy diet, to just eat something which you derive pleasure from. Quite on the contrary, they say eat a healthy food, even though at the moment you're not deriving particular pleasure from this eating, but this is something healthy for you. In other words, very briefly, it's not a chidush, it's a davar hapash, it's something very simple. Quality is not measured based on one's pleasure. And the same thing when we're dealing with hana of Elam Haba in comparison to the hana of connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu via Torah mitzvahs. For that matter, the same Mishnah which says that Yov Hashach has b'tshuva ma'asim tev me'el mazeh mikol chayil mabah, it says when it deals with pleasure, Yov Hashach kiras ruach ve'el mabah mikol chayil mazeh. that when you're dealing with pleasure, no question, the lashon of the Gemara is tzadikim yeshvim v'nenim miziv hashchina. They have they have great pleasure which we can never understand and we can never appreciate in our greatest investment of a godly investment, and it's an investment in Torah mitzvahs. The fact that neshama is invested in a body can't come close on normal circumstances and normal basis, as opposed to tzaddikim, for example. It says HaKadosh Baruch Hu hit iman. The Gemara says me'ein elam haba, that they could feel and derive pleasure in their service to God as the neshama is invested in a body. But the average person, the fact that neshama is invested in a body, can never experience this delight and this this experience of pleasure as the neshama experiences when it's divested of a body. And that's the pshat. Tzadikim yeshim v'nenim miziv hashchina. Because when you're dealing with hana, you're dealing with pleasure and delight. Could you ever compare? And more so, the Gemara says that, I don't want to go off the topic, but the Gemara says even mikol chayil mazeh, even a person doesn't have any problems, and all of his life is full of calm and tranquility and pleasure and serenity and so on. Yet, and which is almost impossible, every person goes through the journey, the odyssey of life, somewhat comes into certain bumps, may be bigger or smaller, but the Gemara says that even if the person has keirach zruach, he has pleasure through entire Eilam Hazeh, doesn't come to one moment in Gan Eden. That makes perfect sense. And that's why it's not a contradiction, and that's why there is the aspiration which exists within a neshama, that he knows that one day he'll be able to experience a genuine godly experience in the world to come, as opposed to as the neshama is invested in the body. But that's when you're looking for pleasure, when you're looking for hana, you're looking for the tainug of nivra, the pleasure of the created entity and being. When you're talking about tainug BAYT, you're talking about the pleasure of godly pleasure, or the pleasure of God, whereby the neshama fulfills its mission and its mandate in making a Kodesh Baruch Hu b'tachtenim yava shachas b'tshuva ma'asim tevim. You're dealing with quality, dealing with Torah and tshuva ma'asim tevim. But we don't have to go off to the tainug BAYT. We're talking about what Torah is. We'll stay focused on this particular pedic. What Torah is a Kodesh Baruch Hu. And if it's a Kodesh Baruch Hu, while the whole entire experience of Gan Eden is just nene miziva shchina, so a healthy mind says, I have pleasure, I don't have pleasure, like someone is a healthy minded person. And he understands that this food, despite he doesn't derive any pleasure of this food, but he knows that this is going to contribute to his health, he jumps for that and he leaves anything else which is just associated with pleasure. And the same thing, a yid's aspiration has to be to live in this Ein Elam Hazeh, but and learn another mission, and learn a piece of Gemara, and learn another chelik in Torah. May again be Teisha B'Ksav, Teisha B'Peh, every chelik in Torah. Because every chelik in Torah is Nechi Hashem Lekecha, is the core essence of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. And the entire experience of Ilma Bad doesn't come close to one Mishnah. One Mishnah. And therefore, a person constantly learns Torah. The Talmud Torah Keneged Kulo. And he constantly embraces the essence of a Kodesh Baruch Hu by doing mitzvahs. Because the mitzvahs are called Pikud in the Malka, Ivar in the Malka. They're called the limbs of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. He embraces and he hugs a Kodesh Baruch Hu b'chvei deva'atzmei. So truth, even Torah, the mitzvahs, even deeper level of the Kodesh Baruch Hu, again, as we elaborated in the previous weeks. But Torah and mitzvahs are dealing with a Kodesh Baruch Hu, by Kodesh Baruch Hu himself, while the whole experience of Ilam Haba is just a ray of Ziv HaShechina. And that's what he says, that the chayis, the energy which exists in Torah, is greater than the energy of all the Eilamis Hachi Elyonim. And because all the Eilamis Elyonim only receive their chayis coming from the core essence of God, which is the Torah, which is the Ritzaini v'Chachmasi Gishbaruch Yidiksiv. And here we're holding Kol M'Chachmasisa, that everything was created from Chachma, and Chachma is Chachmas HaTorah, and because Chachmasi Ritzaini Shel Kodesh Baruch Hu is one with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. So therefore the Chachma itself, which is Torah, as L'mayla Mikulim, is higher and loftier and greater than all including all Eilam Sachi Elyonim, the greatest and loftiest levels of Eilamis. Because Torah is Chachma, and Torah is Ritzaini HaKodesh Baruch Hu, which is called Sev of Kol Almin, which is transcendent of every Eilam. When you're dealing with Eilamis Elyonim, in the end of the day, they're called Eilamis. They're part of Eilam. For that matter, we mentioned Eilam is Melashon Helam Behester. The whole makeup of an Eilam is because there's a concealment of the reality of HaKodesh Baruch Hu. That is the mere name and composition of Olam. It's Olam, Lashon Helav Esther, and it's irrelevant which Olam. From that perspective and point of view, it's irrelevant which Olam. Obviously, the certain elements have more Helav Esther, a greater concealment of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As for example, this Olam in comparison to Olam Elyon, in comparison to Gan Eden, where God is totally manifest. But in the end of the day, it's all Olamis. It's all part of the creation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And a creation, the way the Eibush does Mailam Amaster Satzmi, he conceals himself in order to make up that particular Olam, with that particular level. Ta'ira is Seiviv Kolam, the way the Eibush is transcendent from Olamis. Seiviv means hovering, not necessarily physically hovering, because the Eibush is a Shemaim Esaretz Animali, but what darga, what connection exists within, and what connection is or what level is the Teda? The way the Teda is, the way the Eibishter is for himself, by himself, the way he's transcendent, he's Seiviv, the whole phenomenon of Elamis. And that level is Ein Yochel Islabish B'Seichal, I mean, it can't even enter into Elamis, because it's the core essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The whole reason why there's an Elam, there could be a Neshama, which is Nenim Ziva Shechina, as the Alter Rebbe explains later, it's perfectly aligned with the Elam being a Helav Esther, because you have to have a Noah, you have to enter into this reality and allow a neshama to have a noah. And if it's something which is overwhelming, you can't have a noah from. And again, in this Pedic, working the other way around, because it's the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you cannot invest into Elamis. Because the Elamis is a cover-up, is a Helam Behester, is a concealment of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And here you're dealing within the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it cannot enter into Elamis. It just it just vitalizes and shines from above in a hovering manner. That is this level of Sovev, which in Pnimius Atayda and Zohar, and in Kabbalah, namely in Chassidus, it's associated with the Etzem of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Even the number of places it says that the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is even higher than the term Sovev. But here we're talking about this particular transcendent level of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the Teda, and the He. This is the level of Teda, which is not only such higher than Olamis, it can't even enter. By definition, it can't have a shaykhus to Olamis, as we just explained. And this great level of Torah, and this great level of Seviv, which is ultimately the Torah which we learn, maybe the Mishnah, as I mentioned, every chelik in Torah, this is the level, the He, Hamislabeshes benefesh, which invests in the soul, Hulvashel, and in its garments, of Chinas Gilui Mamosh, in the most revealed and manifest manner, Kish Eiskim B'Torah, when the person learns Torah, when he occupied himself with divrei Torah and words of Torah. Incredible. When you open up a Mishnah, you connect to the most deepest parts of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, something that from that perspective, that level, even Gan Eden cannot be created from that level. Because that level is so much greater than the whole phenomenon of Elam, and any Elam, even the Elam of Gan Eden. If that's the case, why doesn't the person should eventually, right when he opens a Gemara or a Mishnah or any part of Torah, apparently should expire, he should be consumed into the infinite of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If Gan Eden a person cannot experience with it as long as he has an neshama invested in a body, because it's an overwhelming experience, because godliness is manifest, here you're dealing with darga level of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is even transcendent. The whole Elam of Gan Eden is an example. And the whole mitzvah of Gan Eden cannot even be created from this level. So why don't we immediately, when we start learning, if this is Torah, we should expire. And that's what he says. You don't experience, and therefore we don't expire, and therefore we can be able to continue learning. But it doesn't change the fact that it exists. And this is not only exists, this is the level which we connect. As we gave an example last week of a child which is born with a Yerusha, with an inheritance of multi-million dollars. The fact that he's not in tune to that, hence he's not excited of that, he doesn't feel the sensation of being a millionaire, it doesn't take away, because he's a child, doesn't take away the fact that categorically he's a multi-millionaire. As we mentioned last week, even appreciated the lollipop more than the millions of dollars. Even naturally as he grows up into that age and stage. But in the end of the day, it doesn't take away from this reality that when we connect to Torah, when we learn Torah, rather we connect to the core essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if we don't see, Mazlayu Chazi, as this is based on the Gemara, the story with Daniel, that our mazel, some level we do tune into that, we connect to that core essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he says, because, and for that very reason, therefore we could handle, therefore we can comprehend, or we can tolerate the reality of learning Torah because we can't see. As opposed to the source of the neshama, the way it's in the higher levels, at that level it does connect. And does connect and is consumed, and it goes, it clays. In other words, it consumes, it becomes one with the core essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as we learned the Torah here down here lamata. But because the Eibishter does us a favor, Kaviyachal, he allows us, in other words, in order for allow us to continue learning and to continue being and continue living and continue existing with Chaim Aruchim, in other words, to fulfill our mandate in this world, he makes it in a way that we should be able to see. Like the brain of the child in the very beginning, in the onset, and the entry of his life. He's not mature, and therefore he's not mature. He could be a millionaire and then not necessarily experience this excitement or this feeling of being this very well-to-do, wealthy person because he's a child. In other words, because he's not mature enough to experience this sensation, doesn't take away the fact that he's a millionaire, and because and for that reason. So in the context of a child, you can't say for that reason he continues to exist. To a certain extent, if he would understand what this is, and he wouldn't have the utensil, the container to contain this great understanding of this great wealth, perhaps he would be able to synthesize with this reality. As he gets older, as we gave the example, sometimes someone who wins a great amount of money, they teaspoon it into him because initially he's contained because of this great piece of news. They're worried that his container, which is limited and not accustomed to this to this lifestyle or to this amount of wealth, something can go wrong. So they do it wisely. They feed it into him wisely. In this case, in this again, the example we gave last week or the week before, in this case, HaKadosh Baruch Hu orchestrates that we should not be able to see what is really happening when we learn Torah in order to be able to continue living and fulfilling our mandate in this world. As opposed to our own Shadish and Neshama, our own source of Neshama, the way it's L'mayla, does experience it, does understand, it does not only understand, connects to the core essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it certainly is consumed into the infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Into this level of Sovav, into the level of Etzem, this level of Anechi Hashem Alikecha. So, for that matter, we don't expire as a result, like he says, Mishum Hachi Yachal Lisbel, but when we learn just these few lines of Tanya, B'chlal, and Alter Rebbe illustrates in a number of prakim what Torah is all about, it definitely rises the bar of excitement or understanding of what we do, what is accomplished, and what happens when a Yid opens up a Gemara, opens up any part of Torah and learns Torah, is involved in Asik B'Divrei Torah. And for that matter, that is, as the Alter Rebbe explains in the 5th chapter, that is ideally what is Torah Lishma. Lishma means you're learning Torah in order to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Not to mention, that's why the whole notion of learning Torah Leil Lishma is because one does not have the accurate or the adequate perception what Torah is. The moment one understands what Torah is, he's going to think about learning Torah for any other ulterior motive. I mean, everything, this can obviously exist if the Gemara tells it to us. There's a concept of Leil Lishma, continue learning Torah. But if you think, we ponder what Torah is there anything greater than opening Gemara, opening a chelik in Torah, and learning Torah, Shulchan Aruch, a Mishnah, Tanya, a Gemara, a Chumash, a Pasuk Chumash? And Alter Rebbe goes on, and with this is understood, why the virtue of occupation in Torah is even greater than all the mitzvahs. As again, in the Feidish Mishnah, V'talmud Torah Kineged Kolo. And more so, I feel the mitzvah, essentially even more than prayer. Because what is the point of prayer? Is Yichudei L'Misalyenu. The whole point of prayer is we unite. It's about unity in the supreme worlds, and this unity, we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this unity which we accomplish in the supreme world should ultimately be manifest in this physical world. For example, we want Chesed and Gvura. It should. Okay, we're not going to go into the whole idea over here explaining why prayer is yichud olam esalyenim, but very briefly is that in order the hashpah should come down, in order that the bracha, or this which we ask, the hamshacha, the flow of energy should come down in this world and should be manifest in teiv anir v'nigel, in a revealed and apparent good, in a good which is manifest, the way we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Aleinu Rifa'enu, bless our year, cure us, Tekaba Shefer God L'Chedeseinu, blow your shofar, your great shofar, in order to redeem us, all the multiple brachas, which you have the whole entire package of one's average Yid request to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in order that it should come down. In this way, the hashpah, we all understand, comes from higher levels, and it travels from one level to another level. So in order that it should successfully go from one level to another level, there has to be the unity between the sfirot in these levels. The yichud avaz kolosh nizar of chachmon bina, and then from the midas with malchus in every single olam, and one olam should not interfere with another olam. And eventually, this is again which we accomplish within our prayers and our subjugation to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which elicits a very high, lofty level of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which comes into olamot, hence causes the olamot to be mityached, to unite all the spheres within all olamot. They should unite, hence the flow of energy should come nicely and smoothly from one olam to the other, till it should come to this physical world and express itself the way we ask and beseech to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that it expresses itself in a way of teiv anir v'nigla, in a good, in a very positive way. And we should be able to see the good. The goodness should be overt goodness. Teiv hanira v'nigla. So this is the whole point of prayer, which is yichud olam etalyonim. And again, one could look up a little more and understand this idea as explained in a number of places. One of the classical places in Sharat of Mitzvah Tefillah in the Tzemach Tzedek. It's written all over, starting from Likutei Torah. It explains, and obviously again this is traced back into Teres HaNigla, and namely in Teres HaNister in Zohar, as Tefillah being the yichud of Spirits and yichud Elam Salyenim. But the Alter Rebbe elaborates on this in a number of places, even in Tanya, about later in the picture of the entire Torah mitzvahs, but in Likutei Torah, but in Derech Mitzvisecha, which is a sefer written by the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Chabad Rebbe, in which he clearly goes through, he explains every mitzvah and its accomplishment, and what is accomplished through every mitzvah. There's a whole section called Sheidesh Mitzvah Tefillah, and there he explains and elaborates on this nekuda which we just said over here. So, but just anyone is comfortable and could feel very free to find the sefer and look into it, and easy today to find anything. And then other svarim which deal with tefillah as it's associated with the idea of yichud olam esalyenim. But in this context, we're dealing with something so special as yichud olam esalyenim. And as you're dealing with lofty worlds and lofty spheres, and in the spheres which are in the highest levels of Eilamis, including Atzilus, and how much more so Bria, and so on. This seems to be a very special enterprise, the whole enterprise of prayer, that we're miyachad Eilamis Alyein. Could one think of anything greater than that? So why should Torah override that? Torah apparently deals with two people, L'shnai mechs and batalis, two people who are holding a talis. One says, as an example, classic example, the one says, I found it, the other one says, I found it, and this one has to swear swear this way, and this has to swear that way, and so on and so forth. As they both have to swear, as we look in the Mishnah, but again, in one Mishnah and one halacha of the tens of thousands and more halachas which exist through in the entire Torah. And if you think about it, this is just about details which tell us, or Gemara, not necessarily we look at learning Gemara about anything which is associated with Olam Esalyenim. This seems way far superior than our study of Gemara, which ultimately tells us how to live. So why is the learning Torah greater than not only all mitzvahs, but even Tefillah, which is Yichud Olam Esalyenim? Answer: there's no comparison. As we just explained, that the energy which goes into Olam Esalyenim, by definition, is just an extension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Olam Elashon Helam V'Hester. And it comes only of a great contraction from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We can't even understand how HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is Ein Sof, which is infinite, even creates any Olam. Even Olam like Gan Eden. But in the end, when we do see Gan Eden, we understand this is about Olamis. There's just a ziv, a ray, a small trigger of a small thin beam of light, a small thin stream of light coming from the Ein Sof. A tiny stream of light coming from the Ein Sof. As we gave the example, could you compare one drop of the Mediterranean to the entire Mediterranean? The energy which creates and gives, vivifies and vitalizes all elements, including elements Alyenim and including Gan Eden as the example we're giving, is just one drop, one tipa, one stream of light from the Ein Sof. Torah is the entire Ein Sof. As this example, Torah is the entire Mediterranean. Torah is the core of Ein Sof, and all the elements Alyenim are just one little ziv, one little ray of light coming from the Ein Sof. So we can understand why learning Torah supersedes all entire mitzvahs. Obviously, if you can't mitzvah, the Gemara says something mitzvah which you cannot, someone else cannot do for you. Rather, someone else can do for you, as opposed to mitzvahs you can do, you need to do, no one else can do it for you. Which this in itself we have to understand. If Torah is so much greater than all mitzvahs, why do we stop for mitzvahs which we're the only one who can do it, and no one else can do it for us? But it's a separate it's a separate explanation, as Dr. Rabbi is going to explain it later. But you think about the idea conceptually of what Torah is and what mitzvahs are. What mitzvahs just being B, apparently Torah reading B or Pirush HaMishnah, just the explanation how to perform the mitzvah. Why should Torah be greater than the mitzvah? Answer: because Torah is the core essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As we said the other day, even more than mitzvahs, mitzvahs are limbs of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, while Torah is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and even a prayer, which prayer is Yichud Eilam Esalyenim, dealing with Eilam Esalyenim, which is way inferior than the Ein Sof, which exists in Torah. So with this we can understand the virtue of occupation in Torah, greater more than all the mitzvahs, even more than tefillah. And he says, Afilu mit tefillah, even in comparison to mitzvahs, because tefillah is a certain spiritual sensation. So now the question is, how could someone go ahead and daven, if that's the case? How could he stop learning? Comes time of mincha, you could stop learning and you daven mincha, l'chayr, continue learning, because this is dealing with the Ein Sof, and this is dealing with Eilam Esalyenim, Yichud Eilam Esalyenim. And the answer is, if we're realistic with ourselves, and therefore we have to be very careful with the mitzvah of tefillah, for two reasons. I'm just going to say something firstly what he doesn't say over here. We have to, in order to be in tune to this very reality, to be in tune and plugged into a lakus, into what Torah is, this in itself comes through davening. When we divest ourselves from our own ego, and we're mevatel ourselves to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is again the package of tefillah. Ki abdika mamara, we stand as a servant in front of the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is our master, which is the creator. That itself allows us to understand and appreciate and perceive the whole virtue of Torah. And therefore someone's going to say, you know what, I'm just going to continue learning and not davening. Somewhat he'll forget what he's actually doing, and therefore there it can go off to areas which is not only lishma, but it's mamish lishma. In other words, not only something that he's not focusing what Torah is, but he could go off to areas which is mamish Torah, learning Torah lishma, to the extent the Gemara says nas sam amavis, Torah could become sam amavis, because he's not focused on godliness in the end of the day. And therefore it's so important to pray, and so important to invest the time in prayer. But ideally, how could we stop learning Torah? He says over here, because in the end of the day we stop for so many other things. We don't stop to eat, and we don't stop to take a nap, we don't stop to rest. So because we stop for anything else, obviously be looking at the real world. In other words, the way the person's function in Elam Hazeh, obviously is to stop for prayer. And that's what he concludes. Someone whose Torah is not his craft. In other words, Torah sunlight as opposed to Shimon Aisenbach, which by him, because Torah was his whole mitzias, truly his whole mitzias, and therefore there was different rules. L'gabi Shimon and l'gabi Rabbi Yehuda, as the Gemara says, in how much they had to pray and when they had to stop for prayer, because the whole mitzvah is Torah, and Torah is way greater, based on all this which we learned, than even in Kol HaMitzvahs, even tefillah. So l'gabi other mitzvahs, they had to stop anyways. Again, this is all based on the later explanation of this which we just asked. Even a mitzvah which could not be done through others, why should I stop and do it? This is a separate explanation. They had to stop him. But what about prayer? It says that there was different rules for those who teirasim nasam, truly teirasim nasam. Not for someone to someone talks himself in that he's a teirasim nasayid. It's wonderful. We have to aspire to that. We have to try whatever we can, that we should become Tirasim Nase. And to go in the ways of a Tanoim. But not to believe that I am Chas Rachman al-Itzlan at that level. Excuse my being a little bit blatant over here, the way saying that I'm Tirasim Nasi, and therefore I don't have to daven. Or my whole davening doesn't have to be any healthy structure, or I could cut corners when it comes to davening. I don't cut corners when it comes to other things in my life. So to even sometimes a person could Adam ki amos ba'el, that he could devote himself to learning Torah assiduously, diligently. True, but from there to the Tirasim Nasi Shimon Aisenbach, we have to be very careful how to classify ourselves. And in the end of the day, without just going back to what he's saying over here, we stop for anything and everything else. In the end of the day, therefore, we have to stop for davening as well. But here we're talking about the level, what we connect to when we learn Torah, as opposed to tefillah and even opposed to mitzvahs. And that's, it says, he has to stop because because he interrupts, regardless, and therefore, understandably, that he's going to have to that he interrupts for tefillah, which is part of the constitution. And again, to add, which we just began, many times through davening and through investing in a true davening, and exercising a healthy davening, this in itself allows us to tune in and to feel, and not only just to know about it, that this knowledge of Torah, that what Torah is just somewhat to be a distant knowledge, but the knowledge should penetrate into our system and understand and appreciate what Torah is. This in itself, it necessitates a good davening. So we have to invest in davening, but the way he breaks it down over here, when we stop for learning Torah for anything else, obviously we're going to stop for davening. Have a great night.